Tonight we'll drift into the secret rhythms of the green world around us. The plants that stretch beneath your window, the trees that arch above quiet streets, the curling tendrils on your balcony, they all live in a different kind of time. One that doesn't tick, one that breathes, and tonight. We'll begin with a very simple mystery. Do plants sleep? I'd love to know where in the world you're listening and what time it is for you. Let me know in the comments below. I'm always curious where these quiet little science stories are drifting, and if this video will help you when you're there. The answer, like many things in biology, is a gentle no and a quiet yes. Plants, after all, don't have eyelids. They don't have brains or pulses. They don't curl up under blankets or dream of missed deadlines. But when the sun goes down, something changes. If you were to film a field of soybeans or a patch of clover in time-lapse, sped up to the pace of human restlessness, you'd see something strange. The leaves droop, the stems relax. Tiny movements whisper through the greenery, like an unseen breeze. This, scientists call nyctinisty, the sleep-like movements of plants that follow the night. A clover doesn't yawn, but it does lower its leaves at dusk, as if tucking itself in. And while we once thought these motions were just reactions to darkness, we now know the truth runs deeper, inside every plant. From the giant redwood to the speck of moss on your brick wall, lives a delicate rhythm, a circadian clock, and it ticks, slowly. Even in a laboratory with constant light, with no sun to guide it, a plant still keeps its rhythm. Sleep-like movements continue. The internal clock insists on a pattern. It's as if the plant remembers night even when it never comes. One famous experiment placed bean plants under unchanging light for days. Still, their leaves rose in the morning and fell in the evening. Not because they saw nightfall, but because they expected it. Imagine that a being without a brain still expecting the night. Now. This isn't just a charming quirk. These rhythms affect everything. When a plant opens its stomata, the tiny pores on its leaves to breathe. When it begins photosynthesis, when it chooses to flower. All of this is tuned not just to the sun, but to time itself. And here's something lovely, this rhythm isn't exactly 24 hours. Just like humans, plants often run a little fast or a little slow, slightly more than a day, or slightly less. Their clocks aren't mechanical, but organic, affected by temperature, moisture, and even their own evolutionary memory. Some researchers believe that these clocks were one of the first things life evolved a way to feel the rhythm of the earth turning. Before lungs, before brains, before eyes. Just a tiny molecular dance that whispered, now it is night, now it is day. In this way, a plant is never truly awake and never truly asleep. It lives in a flow, a tide of slowness. And perhaps that's why we find them so comforting houseplants in our rooms. Trees outside our windows, forests we walk through when we're trying to clear our heads, because even though we rush, they don't. Even though we plan, worry, frown at screens and check the time, they never hurry. They follow their own rhythm. Beneath the surface, like a lullaby you can't hear but still feel in your chest. And if you were to rest beneath a tree, eyes closed, and imagine its long, quiet life pulsing through the years. You might sense it a being that waits and grows and responds to the world not in seconds or minutes, but in seasons. Which makes you wonder, if every blade of grass is keeping time, if every flower is turning toward the invisible rhythm of the earth, then maybe, just maybe, you're not the only one listening to the night. Maybe that plant on your windowsill has settled into sleep the same way you have not by closing eyes, but by letting go. And though it will never dream of oceans or old lovers or falling off a cliff in a strange pair of shoes, it does something perhaps more beautiful. It waits for the light, and without moving, without worry, it believes it will come, long ago, before anyone understood genes or clocks or even the idea of a cell. A curious man named Jean-Jacques Dortus de Méran placed a mimosa plant in a dark cabinet. This was the 1700s. No LED grow lights, no environmental chambers, just a curious mind and a leafy companion. What he noticed changed everything. Even locked away in total darkness, the mimosa's leaves still lowered themselves at night and opened by day as if the sun still rose and fell inside the plant's memory. It was a quiet revolution. Imagine that a plant moving, not in reaction to its environment, but because of something internal, something hidden, something like a sense of time. The mimosa plant became famous not because it moved, but because it remembered to. That little droop, that subtle fold of leaves, isn't laziness. It's part of a mysterious and gentle cycle, a world of motion so slow we rarely notice. Yet it's there, all around us. If you've ever sat still with a pothos in the evening, or watched your basil bow slightly after sunset, you've seen it too. They're not asleep, but they are changing. Nectinastic movement, that's the name for it, is governed by changes in turgor pressure. Think of each cell like a water balloon. At night, the plant shifts pressure to lower its leaves. At dawn, it restores them again. There's no sigh, no twitch, just a slow tilting toward rest, and even that is just the surface. Inside the plant, tiny molecular gears are turning. Proteins rise and fall in cycles. Hormones pulse through invisible tubes. Genes switch on and off, as if following an ancient script, all to perform this one simple act: fold and wait. Some scientists now believe this nightly movement helps the plant conserve energy or avoid nighttime herbivores. Maybe it reduces moisture loss. Maybe it's a message to pollinators. Or maybe it's just the way nature learned to breathe, and just like us. Not all plants keep time in quite the same way. The prayer plant Maranta leuconura folds its broad leaves upward like hands pressed in meditation. It's slow, so slow. But watch it long enough, and you'll swear it has moods. Sunflowers, in contrast, seem almost playful. Their faces track the sun across the sky during the day, then slowly turn eastward again in the dark, ready to greet the morning. It's a sort of green choreography, not dancing to music, but to something deeper: gravity, light, warmth, and the slow whisper of the earth's turning. At this point, you might be wondering if plants can move, even a little, and if they move based on memory, even in darkness. then what else do they remember? And we'll get there. We will. There's so much more to say. But for now, let's return to that mimosa, nestled in its dark wooden cabinet in Paris. 1729, alone, but still folding, still believing in nightfall. Maybe the man who watched it had no idea he'd just discovered a living clock, a being with no heartbeat, yet a pulse. Maybe he simply smiled at the mystery, and you can too. Because the leaf that lowers itself is not asleep. Not quite. It's listening. To time. To rhythm. To a lullaby that stretches across species and centuries. And as you lie there in whatever quiet room you're in, wherever on this spinning planet you might be, maybe part of you is listening too. Not to traffic. Not to voices. But to that strange and silent pull that says, it's time to rest. And what a gentle truth that is, that even a plant, even a simple leaf, knows how to wait for light beneath the soil, where the roots grow thick and light never reaches. Something astonishing is happening. A root tip presses gently through the earth, past sand grains, through dark pockets of air, around pebbles. It isn't blind. And it isn't deaf either. Yes, deaf, because this root, like many others, is listening. It doesn't have ears, but it hears in its own way. Vibrations low, soft, passing through the soil like a secret language, the sound of water trickling, the shuffle of an insect leg, the tremble of distant rain, even the footstep of a human above, echoed faintly down into the underground quiet. Researchers have found that certain plant roots grow toward the sound of running water, not toward the moisture, not toward light, not even toward heat, but the sound itself. And not just any sound. They seem to prefer frequencies between 200 and 300 hertz, something like a purring cat, or a low hum through the floorboards at night. Isn't that a curious thing to imagine a being without a nervous system, responding to invisible music? You can almost picture it, a root curving, bending ever so slightly, following the invisible trail of vibration. Now, this isn't hearing as we know it. There are no eardrums, no cochleas, no songs, just pressure waves. But those waves change how cells behave. They trigger calcium shifts. They open ion channels. They nudge the plant towards something it can't see, but somehow knows is there. And it gets even stranger. Some plants respond differently to different sounds. The gentle rustle of a breeze may calm a sapling. But the sound of a caterpillar chewing, that's an alarm bell. Some plants ready their defenses the moment that tiny munching begins. Even without ears, the message is clear, danger is near. It's like a symphony down there. One we can't hear not because it's silent, but because it's not meant for us. And here's something delicate, not all roots respond the same way. Some are bold, some are hesitant. Some grow toward footsteps, others stay very still. It's almost like personalities, shaped not by thought, but by chemistry, by experience, by vibration. Now picture this. A quiet field at night, no wind, no moonlight, just soil. And beneath that soil, 1,000 tendrils reaching, curving, listening, not with curiosity, not with fear, but with presence. There's a kind of peace in that. A peace that doesn't need to understand. Just respond. And maybe that's something we forget too easily, that life doesn't always need comprehension. Sometimes, just feeling the vibration is enough. Like when you sense someone's mood without words. Like when music gives you chills you can't explain. Or when you lie still at night and feel the hum of the refrigerator, the murmur of distant cars, and the rise and fall of your own breath, and your body just knows it's time to slow down. It's not thought, it's rhythm. And that's what the roots understand best. So next time you walk across a patch of grass, know this: something beneath your feet might be listening. Not with judgment, not with fear, just with awareness. And somewhere in the dark, a root curves silently towards something, a sound, a hope, a pulse. It doesn't need to know what it is. It only needs to grow. Somewhere in a garden, early morning, a leaf unfolds, not lazily, deliberately, as if responding to something invisible, something ancient, something it has no name for, but fully trusts, because even without eyes, the leaf sees the light, not the way you do. There are no pupils, no irises, no retinas, but it can detect brightness, wavelength, direction, and it responds with a kind of slow precision that would make even a sundial blush. This is not metaphor. Plants can actually taste light. Scattered across the surface of their cells are light-sensitive proteins, photoreceptors. These little molecules act like tiny sensors, detecting red, blue, green, and far-red light. And what they see tells the plant how to grow, when to turn, when to bloom, and when to pause. Some plants lean toward the light that's phototropism. Others shift their leaves for maximum sun exposure, that's heliotropism. Still others, like lettuce, delay sprouting if they sense the light is the wrong color. Maybe there are too many leaves above. Maybe it's not time yet. All from just a feeling, a color, a hint, and it goes deeper. Some plants adjust themselves based not only on brightness, but on the angle of the sun. The red to blue ratio. The difference between morning sunlight and twilight glow. They're not just reacting, they're interpreting. It's almost as if light is a language, and the leaves are reading it. Like a sleeping person can sense the warmth of morning on their face before they open their eyes. A plant knows the time by the color of the sky. And then there are the plants that move only in moonlight. Night-blooming jasmine, queen of the night cactus, moonflowers that tremble open under the stars. They don't do this out of whimsy. They know when the moon is full. They feel the temperature of dusk. They wait for pollinators who only come in the dark, bats, moths. Small fluttering things you might not notice if you weren't still awake at 2 a.m. And in that moment, they bloom. A fragrance is released, a petal unfurls, a message is sent, invisible to us, but bright and clear in the frequencies of scent and shape. One flower, one night, a quiet miracle in ultraviolet. And when it ends, the bloom fades as if it were never there. There's something beautiful about that kind of timing. Not rushed, not forced, just right. Maybe that's why people talk to their houseplants near windows. Maybe deep down, we know they're listening not with ears, but with light-sensitive skin. And maybe we want to be listened to like that wordlessly, patiently, with no need for explanation. The next time morning light spills through your curtain, notice how your body leans toward it. Notice how the warmth makes your skin remember softness, how the golden hue makes you slower, but steadier. You're not that different from the sunflower that turns its face toward dawn. Not that different from the tiny seedling adjusting its leaves just slightly to catch the bluish light of early day. Maybe we all long for the same thing. A signal from the sky that says, it's time. Time to open, time to grow, time to rest. Light doesn't ask, it doesn't push, it just arrives. And even if you close your eyes tonight, even if you drift far from here into whatever quiet place sleep carries you, know this. Something out there, a leaf, a vine, a branch high in the canopy will still be adjusting itself. Not in panic, not in doubt, just gently toward the light. Because that's what life does, even when no one's watching. In a still forest, something unseen passes from one tree to another, not a bird, not an animal, not wind. It's a chemical whisper, a scent, a signal, a silent alarm drifting through the air like a sigh. One leaf is bitten, just one. A caterpillar, soft-bodied, small, begins to nibble. It's nothing dramatic, no shriek, no falling branches. But the moment it happens, something begins. The plant responds. Within seconds, it starts producing defensive chemicals, bitter compounds that make it taste less appetizing. And not just in the bitten leaf, but throughout the plant. As if the whole organism has received the news we're under attack. That alone would be impressive. But the true marvel is what happens next. The neighboring plants, untouched, begin producing the same bitter compounds, as if they too got the memo. But how there's no root connection, no visible thread between them. What bridges the gap is air. Plants release molecules, ethylene, methyl jasmonate, other tiny airborne compounds. These are chemical signals, drifting like perfume, and nearby leaves, they listen. Not consciously, of course. There's no intention, just the right molecules meeting the right receptors, like a key fitting a lock. It's a kind of invisible conversation, something like danger. I hear you. I'm ready. And so a field of unbitten plants prepares itself because one of them was bitten. It's cooperation without planning. It's defense without a brain. It's community without words. We used to think plants were passive, quiet, beautiful, but dumb. Now we know they are beautiful and busy, not loud, but alive in their own slow language. There's an elegance to it, this idea that a plant can warn another of danger, not through screaming, but through scent. The same way we might smell smoke before we see fire. And it's not just danger that's shared. Some plants, like sagebrush and tomato, send out signals to time their flowering, to discourage competition, or even to coordinate defense strategies. One plant says, "I'm stressed." The others respond, "Noted. Adjusting now." It's like standing in a room full of people and catching the change in mood before anyone speaks. There's a reason some gardeners say their plants feel different when they're being watched. The science is still unraveling. But we know this much. The air between plants is not empty. It's alive with scent, with meaning. Even the simplest breeze might be carrying a dozen tiny messages, invisible threads spun from one stem to another. And in that breeze, perhaps, is a quiet kind of intelligence. Not the sharp kind, not the loud kind, the kind that whispers rather than lectures, that adjusts rather than commands. Imagine what would happen if humans did that more often, if our worries were gentle scents, if our thoughts were signals others could feel, not hear, if instead of shouting, we just emitted calm, or readiness, or reassurance, like lavender does when it's crushed, or like pine trees do on a hot day, releasing those woody notes that somehow make you breathe a little deeper. There's something reassuring in knowing that the air is not just full of noise and fumes, but also quiet instructions, a symphony of sighs and signals exchanged between rooted beings. Next time you walk through a garden or sit under a tree, imagine the air around you as a soft conversation, one you can't hear, but that still touches your skin, and maybe, just maybe, some part of you responds, not in words, but in stillness, because there's wisdom in that silence. And sleep lives very near to it. Below your feet, beneath grass and pavement and centuries of fallen leaves, lies a hidden world. It's not made of stone, not built of wires or concrete, and yet it's one of the most complex networks on Earth. They call it the Wood Wide Web. Imagine this: the roots of trees, stretching and branching like fingers. Now imagine a second layer, a lace of fine white threads woven through the soil, threading between roots, curling into root hairs, wrapping around tiny pebbles. This is mycorrhizal fungi, a tongue twister of a word, but a soft-spoken miracle. These fungi form a symbiotic relationship with plants. They trade. Fungi can reach farther into the soil than roots ever could, bringing back water and minerals. In return, the plants give them sugars, sweet drops of carbon pulled from the air and stored from sunlight. But what makes this underground partnership so remarkable isn't just the trade. It's the communication. Through these fungal threads called hyphae, signals travel. Warnings, nourishment, information. One tree, under stress from drought or insect attack, may send carbon or distress compounds through the network to another tree, sometimes a different species altogether. And the receiving tree adjusts. It might change its water uptake, thicken its bark, delay budding, or simply know in the way a tree can that something is happening nearby. This happens not in seconds, but in hours. Not in words, but in chemistry. A forest, when seen from above, looks like individuals, but underground, it acts like one. And here's a dreamy little fact. Some trees, older than your great-grandparents, serve as hubs in this network. They're called mother trees. They hold connections to dozens, even hundreds, of surrounding saplings. And when they die, They sometimes send out a final gift, a surge of carbon, nitrogen, or defensive compounds into the web to feed the next generation. Not because they know, but because that's what the network does. You might never guess that while you walk through a quiet pine forest. You're passing over a mind of sorts, a slow, silent, mycelial mind. Not thinking like we do, but sensing, balancing, sharing. We often imagine intelligence as something sharp, something fast. But the forest whispers, slow can be smart. Stillness can be full of information. And there's something comforting in that. It means we're surrounded by community, even where we see only trees. Maybe that's why walking through woods feels so calming. Why a hike can soothe a mind that screens and scrolls cannot. You're stepping into a place where everything is listening. Not judging, just listening. And it doesn't stop with trees, grasses, shrubs, wildflowers, even your houseplants, when grown in shared pots. Sometimes link their roots through fungal threads, a silent support system, a quiet connection. One study found that when a bean plant was attacked by aphids, its neighbors connected through a fungal bridge began to increase their defensive chemicals before the bugs even arrived. A warning passed without sound, a conversation through the soil. And you're part of this world, too. You breathe what they breathe. You exhale what they need. And when you lie down, when your brain finally quiets, when the devices fall away and the dark settles in, your body remembers a rhythm far older than thought, the rhythm of mutual care, of networks, of listening in silence. Maybe we all long for that kind of connection, the kind where we don't have to say everything, where our presence is enough, where someone or something senses what we need and responds. Even if it's just a tree, even if it takes a year, even if we never know, down there in the soft dark, the messages pass like breath, not fast, not urgent, but constant. And maybe tonight, as you drift, your mind can root itself a little, not into worry, but into that network of calm, because you're not alone. Even in the soil, life is whispering, I'm here, I see you, let's grow. Imagine a tree, tall and wide, older than every building in your town. It stands in silence, year after year, watching the seasons turn like pages. To most of us, it looks still, unmoving, unchanging, rooted in place, without urgency or memory. But it remembers, not in the way you do no birthdays, no names, no string of summer vacations, but memory all the same, a different kind. Inside its rings, carved by time and tension, are stories. Stories of dry summers, of heavy winters, of fires that licked at its bark and passed by. You can see them if you cut the tree and count. Narrow rings during hard years. Wide rings when the rains were kind. But this isn't just passive memory. It's not like a diary on a shelf. This memory changes the tree. Studies have shown that trees can recall past droughts. If a young tree survives one, it may change the way it grows, closing its stomata faster the next time the soil dries, hoarding water sooner, preparing more thoroughly, as if it's saying, quietly, I've been through this before. and its response isn't temporary. It lasts. Some trees carry the imprint of an early trauma for their entire lifespan. Others pass it on, subtly influencing the way nearby seedlings behave. We call it stress imprinting, a form of botanical experience. It's not conscious, but it's real. One generation's suffering becomes the next generation's wisdom. And not through stories, but through chemistry, through hormones, protein folding, gene expression. It's memory written in molecules. There's something soft and melancholic in that. A willow that once dried out too fast might now grow shorter roots, but spread them wider. A pine that grew through a long winter might sprout leaves a few weeks later in spring just to be safe. It's a memory of caution, of survival. And it happens in your backyard, in your houseplant, in the little maple down the road that keeps shedding leaves too early, not because it's sick, but because it remembers a frost that came too soon once. Even among humans, memory shapes reaction. We hold tensions in our shoulders from arguments long past. We flinch at sounds we no longer recognize. We grow careful, or quiet, or fierce, not always because of the present, but because of what came before. And perhaps, in that way, we're not so different from the trees. Sometimes we forget what we know, but our bodies don't, and neither do theirs. So next time you walk past an old tree, one with a scar on its trunk or a crooked limb, imagine what it remembers. The winter of '83, the hurricane of '61, or something quieter, a summer with no bees. Maybe it stands a little more still now. Maybe its roots don't stretch quite as far. Maybe it trusts the wind just a little less. And still, it grows. With that memory. Through that memory. Not despite it. Because resilience isn't forgetting. It's growing anyway. And tonight, as you lie in stillness, maybe you can let go of the idea that healing requires erasing. Maybe you, like the tree, can carry your quiet memories without needing to explain them, without needing to name them, just knowing they shaped you. And that's okay. Because the tree doesn't try to forget. It just grows a new ring, softly, silently, slowly. And so can you. Picture a sunflower in a field, tall and steady, its golden face gently tracking the sun from east to west, then turning back again overnight, ready to follow the light once more come morning. No eyes, no clock, no consciousness. And yet, perfect timing. Sunflowers are timekeepers. So are tiny algae in a petri dish. So is the sleepy basil on your kitchen windowsill. All of them carry within their cells a rhythm, the circadian clock, ticking not in seconds, but in waves of proteins, pulses of calcium, and tiny molecular switches flipping on and off like quiet, faithful metronomes. Plants don't wear watches. They are watches, even without sunlight. A plant knows roughly when to begin photosynthesis, when to open or close its stomata, when to flower, when to grow. It's not magic. It's just rhythm, born from billions of years of Earth's turning. In the early hours of morning, long before you wake, long before the sky begins to glow, certain genes in a leaf begin to activate. It's as if the plant is whispering to itself, soon, And when the first photons break over the horizon, the plant is ready. Not reacting, but prepared. Not passive-tuned. You see, plants don't just respond to time, they count it. Take the example of lettuce. Lettuce seeds will not germinate if they've sensed light at the wrong time of day. They know the duration of darkness they've experienced. They know whether that darkness matches a true night or just a shadow. How through something called photoperiodism, the measurement of day length, some plants flower only when the nights reach a certain length. Others wait until the days are long enough, and they can be fooled by artificial light, by cloudy skies, by unusually warm evenings, but only slightly. Their internal clocks always gently pull them back into sync. Even algae floating in dark oceans, miles below sunlight, pulse in regular cycles, no sun to see, no sky, yet the rhythm is still there, which makes you wonder, where does time live? Maybe not just in the sky. Maybe it hums inside the cells. Maybe time is not something we follow, but something that follows us. You've felt it too, haven't you? That internal knowing, that certain hour of the night when your body becomes heavy. Or the strange energy that returns, predictably, every afternoon. Your blood pressure, your temperature, your alertness, your dreams all flowing in rhythms. Even when you're isolated from sunlight, your brain keeps time. So does a sunflower. So does moss. And so does your houseplant, which may lean a little more to the left each morning, not just toward the light, but with it. There's a kind of poetry in that, a quiet choreography, as if the whole world is dancing, but very slowly. And none of us are the choreographer. We're just following the beat. You may not think about time as you drift off tonight. You may forget the hours, the calendar, even your name, for a while. But your cells won't. They'll hum softly. Repair. Renew, adjust, just as the cells of a leaf in the dark begin preparing for dawn, even asleep. We are turning toward the light. Even still, we are measuring time. And in that soft calculation, there's comfort. You don't need to try to stay in sync. You are in sync, even now, even here. So rest. Let the ticking of the day dissolve, and let the inner rhythm, quiet and unhurried, guide you gently toward the next. In the dust of a desert, a seed lies buried. It's smaller than a grain of rice, lighter than a single snowflake, and for 20 years it waits. Not sleeping, exactly, but not living either. It's in a state of suspension, a soft pause, like a breath held for decades. Neither growing nor dying, just waiting. This is dormancy, a seed's version of stillness inside. All the blueprints for life are folded tightly. Roots that haven't stretched, leaves that haven't unfurled, a stem still curled into itself like a quiet thought. But the seed is listening. It waits for a signal. Not just water, though water is part of it. Not just warmth, though that helps too. It waits for a pattern, a whisper in the rainfall, a certain rhythm of wet and dry. Too little and it stays asleep. Too much and it does the same. But just the right dance, the right moisture in the right order over the right number of days, and the shell begins to soften, not crack, not yet. just soften. Then the smallest root begins to push. This seed, maybe it's a desert lupine, maybe an ancient acacia. It doesn't want to be early, because early means death, sun too strong, soil too shallow. No rain coming next week. It waits because waiting is wiser than rushing, and in that waiting, there's a kind of intelligence, not conscious, not calculating, but finely tuned. Seeds are the memory of plants. Some lie dormant in Arctic soils for centuries, frozen but still viable. Others sleep in seed banks, quietly surviving while the species above ground vanishes. Some seeds need fire to awaken. Some need to pass through the stomach of a bird. Some only sprout when a competing plant dies. They are listening for very specific cues, temperature shifts, light frequencies, humidity patterns. It's like a locked door that only opens for the right kind of knock. And when they hear it, they begin. There's something beautiful about that kind of patience. Because in a world that shouts now, a seed whispers when, and when the moment is right. It commits. It doesn't hesitate. It doesn't grow halfway. It puts out a root, then a shoot, then a leaf, and there it is, life, from dust. You might not think you have much in common with a desert seed, but you've waited too. Waited for the right time, for clarity, for safety, for someone to say now. And maybe, like the seed, you didn't always understand what you were waiting for. Just that it wasn't yet. Maybe you felt yourself soften, begin to change, quietly prepare. Not visible on the outside, but inside so much movement. And when the time came, maybe you grew in silence, without fanfare. A quiet stretch toward light no one saw but you. That's the kind of growth seeds understand. Not dramatic, but real, permanent, steady. So tonight, if you feel stalled, or paused, or like nothing's happening, remember the seed. It waits. Not because it's weak, but because it knows. It knows that beginning too soon is as dangerous as not beginning at all. And when it's ready, it grows with everything it has, just as you will. In a quiet room, a houseplant stands by the window. It looks still, decorative, a green companion in a ceramic pot. But if you stayed up all night and watched in slow motion, not with your eyes, but with time-lapse vision, you'd see something remarkable. It moves, not with legs or wings, not like a pet or a person, but in its own slow choreography. Leaves shift position, stems tilt ever so slightly. Some rise, some fold. It's the secret motion of night. One of the most elegant examples is the prayer plant Maranta. At dusk, its leaves rise vertically, like hands folded in rest. At dawn, they slowly spread open again. A daily motion, smooth and quiet. Like breath, other plants, oxalis, legumes, even certain herbs droop in the evening. It's not sadness, it's efficiency. Lowering their leaves at night may help reduce moisture loss, or avoid attracting nocturnal herbivores, or simply follow the rhythm written in their cells. This nighttime movement has a name, nectinisty. The same concept we touched on when the mimosa folded its leaves, but in houseplants. It can feel more personal, as if your ficus has its own bedtime routine. Some scientists believe these changes are tied not only to circadian rhythms, but to fluctuations in pressure inside the cells, the way a plant reallocates its inner water, shifting the turgor in motor cells at the base of each leaf. But for those of us watching at home, it doesn't need to be technical. It just feels peaceful. There's something oddly comforting about knowing your plant rests when you do, that it follows the same great clock, even though you live such different lives. And it's not just movement. At night, some plants alter their chemistry. Jasmine intensifies its fragrance after sunset. Tobacco plants increase their nicotine levels. Cacti close their pores, storing up water. Even photosynthesis, the one process we always tie to sunlight, has a night phase. The energy gathered by day is converted, distributed, and stored in the darkness like a chef preparing for the next morning's feast. Everything continues, but more softly, like a kitchen at midnight, still busy, but hushed. And here's a lovely fact. If you talk to your plants at night, their responses, their internal changes may be different than during the day. They're in a different state, more receptive in some ways, more focused inward in others, almost meditative. You've felt that too, haven't you? That shift in the world after sunset, when traffic softens, when the blue light fades from the sky, when your own thoughts begin to slow and stretch. It's not sleep yet, but it's close. A liminal time, a gentle dissolving of boundaries. Your body, like the plant, begins shifting. Hormones adjust, melatonin rises, blood pressure dips, eyes grow heavier. No signal was needed. Just nightfall. Even indoor lights don't fool the body completely. Some part of you knows, and in the same room, the same quiet space, your houseplant is sensing it too. A nonverbal agreement. Time to let the day go. You see, we often think of the world as loud, rushing, complicated. And it is. But beneath that, there's a rhythm that everything shares. People, plants, even bacteria. It's not forced. It's not scheduled. It just is. Somewhere in a greenhouse. A violin plays softly. No audience, no applause. Just rows of green leaves and soil-scented air. And yet, something responds in experiments over the past few decades. Scientists and more than a few curious gardeners have played music to plants. And not just any music. Bach, jazz, rock, even spoken word. And while the data is still debated, a gentle trend has emerged. Some plants seem to grow faster with music. Others change their root direction, their leaf angle, even their gene expression. Not because they're fans of Mozart, but because they're sensing vibration. Sound, after all, is just movement through air, waves pressing into matter, and leaves delicate, wide, often suspended on thin stalks, are wonderfully receptive to this kind of touch. When a plant hears music, it's not listening the way you do. There's no melody, no memory, no taste in genre. But the vibrations may trigger changes in hormone levels, shifts in calcium, tiny cellular adjustments. It's the same idea as wind movement plants that sway in the breeze often grow stronger stems. Vibration encourages growth, flexibility, resilience. Now, not all music is equal. Some frequencies seem calming. Others, like harsh industrial noise or constant high-pitched tones, appear to stress certain species. So yes, your spider plant might prefer a little ambient piano over heavy metal. But it's not because it's judging your playlist. It's just responding to the physics. Still, it's tempting, isn't it? To imagine that the green beings in your room enjoy the lullaby you hum while watering them, that the basil leans in just slightly when you speak. There's a softness in believing we can share space, even emotion, with something that doesn't speak back. And maybe that's the point. Plants don't interrupt, they don't argue, they don't ask for anything, loudly. But they might be listening, through vibration, through touch, through changes in the air. Even our voices, those gentle rumblings of throat and breath, can cause reactions. One study suggested that when humans speak near plants, especially in low, soft tones, some species may increase the expression of certain growth-related genes. Is it emotion? No. But is it response? Absolutely. And that's enough. Enough to say we're not alone, even when we whisper. Because the world, even the green world, answers back. Not with words, but with shifts in direction, with movement, with bloom. You might say something to your ficus tonight, a thank you, a secret, a sigh, and never know what it changed. But that's the beauty of it. Not all communication needs confirmation. Sometimes it's the act that matters. A lullaby sung to someone who may not understand, but still feels it. Maybe the same goes for you. Maybe what you need tonight isn't understanding, just someone to hum near you, to speak softly, to offer a vibration that says you're here, you're safe, you can grow, and the plant, quiet as ever, hums it back. Not loudly, but enough, in the stillness of a field, a caterpillar chews, not loudly, not frantically, just a soft, repetitive gnawing, one tiny mouth on one tender leaf, and the plant responds, not with panic, not with screaming, but with chemistry. It changes. Within minutes, the bitten leaf begins to alter its molecular makeup. Bitter compounds form tannins, alkaloids, enzymes, defenses. But the most curious part, it doesn't stop at one leaf. The signal travels not electrically, not emotionally, but through the plant's vascular system, a sort of slow internal mail, and before long, other parts of the plant, untouched and unaware, begin producing the same chemicals, and nearby plants, they smell it. The scent of stress, the perfume of warning, it drifts from leaf to leaf, bush to bush. A silent alarm across a green landscape. Wild tobacco is especially dramatic about this. When it senses the saliva of a particular caterpillar, just that species, it ramps up its nicotine production overnight. Not gradually, urgently. Nicotine isn't just addictive to humans, it's toxic to insects. In other words, the plant fights back. And it doesn't just fight, it chooses. Some plants even alter their defenses depending on which herbivore is attacking. Chewing caterpillar. One response, piercing insect. Another, that's not blind reflex, that's discernment. Now is that intelligence? It depends on your definition. But clearly, the plant isn't passive. It recognizes the difference between a wound and an attack. It distinguishes friend from foe. It adapts. You could say it feels threatened, not emotionally, but biologically. And in that slow-motion battle, the plant doesn't scream, it doesn't flail. It simply becomes less appealing, a quiet resistance. You might not expect such precision from a being without nerves, but perhaps that's the lesson. That defense doesn't need to be loud. That strength can be chemical. That fear, or something like it, can bloom in leaves. In the world of humans, fear often feels messy, sharp, visible. But in plants, fear is a shift in molecules, a change in taste, a stiffening of the stem, a readiness. You can imagine a field of wildflowers at midnight, each one tuned to the breath of the wind, the brush of a beetle leg, the scent of a crushed neighbor. No movement, but every cell on high alert. Stillness is not absence. Stillness is preparation. And sometimes, it's compassion. Because some plants, when under attack, direct their chemical defenses downward toward the roots, toward the seeds, toward the parts that matter most for the future. As if saying, protect what comes next. You've felt that too, haven't you? The instinct to shield your softness, to send energy inward when the world outside feels sharp, to defend quietly, without explanation. Maybe plants teach us something about boundaries, that we don't always need to bite back. We can simply become harder to chew. And while no plant dreams of being eaten, it doesn't despair. It adjusts. It endures. It blooms again. So if you've been chewed on lately by life, by stress, by uncertainty, maybe you don't need to panic. Maybe you just need to change the taste. Just a little bitterness. Just enough to say, I'm still here. And I'm not so easy to hurt anymore. And when the danger passes, as it always does, you'll be there. Leaf turned toward the light once more, still growing, still fragrant, still beautifully alive. Somewhere near the edge of a forest, a small sapling stands in the shifting light. Its leaves flutter faintly, catching the speckled shadows of late afternoon. But it's not just sensing light, it's sensing color. Not as we do no green fields or blue skies, but through ancient pigments that measure the shade of the world. You see, plants have something extraordinary, tiny built-in receptors called phytochromes. They're not eyes. They're not even cells. They're molecules. And yet, they allow the plant to perceive. These phytochromes detect red light and far red light, which might sound like a technicality, but it's everything. Red light tells the plant you're in full sun. Far red light whispers, you're in shade. That's because as sunlight passes through the leaves of taller plants, the red light is absorbed, while far red light passes through. So when a sapling senses more far red than red, it knows it's under a canopy, in competition. in danger of being left in the dark. And what does it do? It grows. Not just generally upward, a surge in height, a stretch toward any gap in the foliage above. It elongates its stem, reallocates its resources, aiming for that patch of sky where red light is richest. All from just a color ratio. It's not vision, but it's awareness. Plants track shadows as time passes, feeling the light change in frequency from morning blue to evening red. They use this to prepare for dusk, to adjust flowering schedules, to store energy for the night. It's called shade avoidance, but it's really shade negotiation. The plant isn't afraid of the dark. It just knows what it means. Darkness signals rest. Shadow signals urgency. Dusk signals transition, and they respond accordingly. Even seeds underground can detect light. A tiny, momentary beam reaching through a crack in the soil can trigger germination. The plant says, "Ah." The world has changed. It's time. And in reverse. Some seeds will refuse to sprout if the light they sense is far red dominant. They know that sprouting into a world of shade is a death sentence, so they wait. Even in perfect moisture, even with warmth, they wait because the quality of light matters. There's a kind of precision here that's hard to imagine. A rose doesn't bloom simply because the sun is warm. It blooms because a cascade of receptors has whispered to every cell now. Now is good, and perhaps that's what makes it beautiful. Not just the color or the fragrance, but the fact that it waited for exactly the right moment to open. No sooner, no later. You might think of time as hours, as deadlines, as clocks. But to a plant, time is color. Time is the language of photons. And that's something you can feel too. You know the way the golden light of late afternoon feels different than noon. You know the deep, blue hush of twilight. How everything seems to hold its breath. Your skin senses it, even if you forget the science. And maybe, like the plant, part of you responds. You slow down, you soften, you prepare. Because even if we don't have phytochromes in our leaves, we carry something like them in our souls. A knowing that not all shadows are threats. Some are invitations. Some are transitions. So if you find yourself in a patch of far red light, metaphorically or otherwise, don't panic. It might simply be your turn to stretch, to reach upward, to find your own clear sky, to feel the changing light and say, "I know, I'm ready, after all." That's what the sapling does, with no eyes, no mind. Just a quiet confidence in the sky. Deep inside a tree, something stirs. It's not blood. Trees have no hearts, no pulses, no nervous systems humming with electricity like ours. But there are signals. There is movement. And there is communication. When a leaf is touched, when light changes, when drought creeps in, impulses travel through the tree. Not as fast as nerves, but fast enough. Electrical charges shift, ions move, hormones flow. Scientists call it electrochemical signaling, and it's how plants relay information across their bodies. Some of these signals move at speeds of a few millimeters per second. Others are faster, darting up stems, triggering reactions in distant branches. It's not thought, not feeling, not emotion. but it looks an awful lot like awareness. If a tomato plant has its stem bent, it sends signals to other parts of itself, warning of damage. If a tree's roots encounter saline soil, the entire plant adjusts, slowing water intake, altering leaf behavior. These reactions are coordinated, calculated in a way, and they're not random. They often involve plant hormones like auxins, gibberellins, and abscisic acid. Strange names, yes, but they act like messengers. Tiny droplets of decision-making. When conditions are right, auxins tell a stem to grow toward light. Gibberellins tell seeds to sprout. Abscisic acid whispers, "Close your pores. Drought is near," it's chemical poetry. And in some ways, it mirrors what emotions do in animals. Not in the feeling, but in the function. Emotion, after all, is the body's way of adjusting to change, of preparing. Fear triggers flight. Joy invites rest. Sadness slows us down. All of it, internal communication. Plants don't feel fear, but they react. And their reactions are not always mechanical. Some are anticipatory. Some are delayed. Some are nuanced. When we cut a plant, it sends out signals, not just damage reports, but healing orders to seal off the wound, to grow around it, to prepare defenses for next time. If a root grows too near a competitor, it can change course. Not with anger, just with information. This isn't emotion, but it's not nothing. There's a term for it, plant neurobiology. Though controversial since plants have no neurons, the name hints at a truth we're still beginning to understand, that life can sense and respond and adjust without needing a mind like ours. And maybe that's the lesson. That consciousness isn't the only form of complexity, that you don't need a face to feel the world around you. A vine curling around a trellis is not making a choice the way you do, but it still finds the beam. Still knows when to pull back. Still pauses when touched too firmly. It senses, just like you do when someone enters a room and the air changes. Just like your skin prickles in a cold breeze. Just like your breath slows when someone speaks kindly. Not thought, just response. And when we think of intelligence, we often picture fast reactions, clever tricks, rapid calculation. But what if true intelligence can also be slow? What if it can live in a sap and stem? What if feeling the world deeply, even if you don't move quickly through it, is its own kind of wisdom? A tree does not rush, it does not flinch, it does not panic. But it does respond, and in the middle of the forest, in the stillness of green, with light filtering through like warm mist, those responses shape the world. So tonight, if your mind is racing, remember this. It's okay to process slowly, to take your time, to send signals inward before acting outward. Because sometimes, movement doesn't look like movement. Sometimes, the most powerful changes happen within quietly, like sap rising, and like the tree. You can respond without hurry, without drama, with calm, a soft current in your chest, a shift in your roots, a turn toward healing. In your living room, under soft lamplight, a houseplant gently rests. You wouldn't notice anything unusual. Its leaves don't droop like a sleepy cat. Its stem doesn't hum or sigh. But something is happening, because when night falls, your plant, like you, changes state. It enters what scientists call nocturnal metabolism, a quieter version of itself, less showy, more internal, during the day. It opens its tiny pores, the stomata, to breathe in carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen. This is how it photosynthesizes light in, sugar out, life sustained. But at night, those pores close. Not because the plant is lazy, because it's smart. With no light to power photosynthesis, keeping those pores open would just waste water. So it seals them shut, locks in moisture, and begins its nighttime routines. Some species, like succulents, cacti, and orchids, have evolved even more clever rhythms. They open their stomata only at night, storing carbon dioxide like a secret recipe, then using it during the day when the sun returns. This process is called CAM photosynthesis, crassulacean acid metabolism. It's a way to stay hydrated in dry climates, a quiet trick in the dark. Your aloe vera, sitting quietly by the sink. It's conducting chemistry while you sleep, and it's not alone. At night, some plants increase their antioxidant production. They repair cell damage. They redistribute sugars, recharge tissues, and recalibrate their inner clocks, all while looking perfectly still. You might walk by a peace lily at midnight and see nothing but a green silhouette. But inside, there's movement, a rebalancing, a restoration. Sound familiar? Your own body does the same. While you sleep, your brain tidies up, your cells repair, hormones reset, memories are filed, dreams bloom, like flowers made of thought. There's no parade, no noise. Just quiet repair, and maybe, on some level, that's why we keep plants near us. Not just because they're pretty, but because they remind us in their silent way that rest is not stillness, that sleep is not an absence, but a different kind of presence. Even a cactus, spiny and dry, hums at night. A soft metabolic music, tuned to the slow rhythm of survival. And yet, how rarely we notice. We light our rooms, scroll our screens, move through evening like it's just extra daytime. But outside, the green world has shifted. The leaves have tuned down. The forest has exhaled. Even the weeds by the roadside are different after dusk. Plants don't just survive the night. They use it. They prepare. They listen. They wait. And when dawn comes slowly, quietly they begin again. You don't need to see the change to believe it's happening. Just like you don't need to feel progress to know it's real. Some nights are quiet because they are healing. So tonight, maybe your job is not to be productive, not to make sense of everything, not to solve or finish or push forward. Maybe your job is to be like the plant, to fold in, to seal your pores, to let the light go and trust it will return, because it always does, and when it does, you'll be ready. No drama, no alarm, just a quiet unfolding, like a leaf toward morning, in the middle of a cracked desert floor, Beneath sun-bleached stones and sleeping lizards, a seed lies buried. It has been there for 10 years, maybe more, and it is still waiting. Some desert plants spend most of their lives not as stems or leaves or flowers, but as seeds, tiny capsules of potential. Wrapped tightly in coats of dust, they wait, not for any rain, but for the right rain. A brief drizzle won't do. One cloudy morning won't trick them. Because they've evolved in a world where mistakes are fatal. In places like the Sonoran Desert or the dry plains of Central Australia, rain is a rare guest. Sometimes it visits once a year, sometimes not at all. But when it does come, when a storm rolls in and the sky bursts open, the desert changes in hours. Seeds that have waited silently for years suddenly awaken. Pale green shoots break through the sand. Tiny flowers bloom in neon bursts. What looked like nothing becomes everything. They call this phenomenon a desert bloom, and it feels like magic. But it's not magic. It's strategy. It's timing. It's trust. These seeds carry something called rain memory. They don't sprout just because of moisture. They measure the pattern, the depth, the sequence of rainfall. Too shallow, and they stay dormant. Too fast, and they wait. They know that one good storm isn't enough. There must be follow-up rain, a rhythm, a promise. And until that promise is clear, they remain still, no matter how long it takes. Some seeds germinate after 20, even 40 years. Others never wake, but their siblings do. It's a kind of biological gamble. Spread out the risk, and someone will survive. And when the conditions are finally perfect, they grow fast. No hesitation, no looking back. In 2 weeks, they can flower. In 3, they set seed. In 4, they're gone, returning to the soil, starting the cycle again. A whole life lived in a month, and then stillness until the next rain. You might wonder, how does a seed know? How does it measure the sky? The answer lies in its coat, its ability to absorb, its sensitivity to water temperature, soil chemistry, and even microbial signals. It's like a lock that only opens when every element clicks into place. And have you ever waited for something like that? A signal to begin, a feeling that the world was finally ready for you. That now is the moment. Maybe you've stayed still for years, growing roots in the dark. Not because you're afraid, but because you're wise. Because like the seed, you know that starting too early can be dangerous, that real beginnings can't be forced, that sometimes patience is growth, and maybe, deep down, you've always trusted that when the right storm comes, you'll know what to do. Not because someone tells you, not because the calendar says so, but because something inside you shifts, a soft unlocking. The same way desert seeds awaken when the sky finally sings the right song. So if you feel dormant tonight, still, quiet, paused, that's not failure. That's preparation. That's survival. That's the kind of stillness that holds entire forests in its silence. And when your rain comes in, whatever form it takes, you'll bloom too. Not because you're rushing, not because you're ready in someone else's eyes, but because the rhythm finally matches your own. And when you do, it will be sudden, it will be right, and it will be beautiful. In a garden just before dawn, a flower begins to open, its petals curled tight through the night. stretch slowly outward, delicate, deliberate, as if the light were drawing them by hand. And this flower, like so many others, knows the time. It's not guessing. It's not copying its neighbors. It is following an internal rhythm as old as flowering itself. This is floral circadian timing, a quiet but intricate dance between light, temperature, and inherited memory. Some flowers bloom early, at first light. Others open only when the sun is high. Still others, like the moonflower or night-blooming cereus, unfurl only under starlight, as if the moon itself were pulling on their threads. They know when to open because opening is everything. To bloom at the wrong time too early, too late means missing the pollinators. And so, flowers tune themselves to the lives of bees, moths, hummingbirds, and even bats. Some release their scent only in the hours when their preferred visitors are most active. Others change color subtly throughout the day, a shift not visible to humans, but glowing in ultraviolet, visible to insects. It's not performance, it's communication, and it's stunningly precise. A daisy doesn't just bloom in the morning, it often does so at the same minute every day. Some researchers have even constructed floral clocks from this behavior, planting different species to track the passage of time by which one blooms when. Linnaeus, the Swedish botanist, dreamed of a garden where each flower told the hour. It was never perfect. Of course, clouds, wind, and life have their own ideas. But the concept is true. The world keeps time in more ways than we notice. Even at night, flowers aren't dormant. They may close their petals to protect against dew or wind. They may conserve their scent, waiting for the right moment to release it. And when morning comes again, they open with astonishing confidence. No hesitation, no second guessing, just trust in the rhythm they carry. That's what time is, after all. Not the numbers on a screen, but the feeling that something is right, that now is the moment, that the light has returned, and it's safe to bloom. You may not have petals, but you felt it. That moment when something within you says, now, it's time to speak, it's time to rest, it's time to change, even when the world around you isn't quite sure. Your body keeps its own rhythm. We call it chronobiology, the study of internal clocks. But it's more than science. It's a comfort to know that. Like the flower, you don't need to force timing. You already have it inside you. And just as flowers follow the rising sun, your body follows its own signals. Not every day will be blooming day. Sometimes your petals will stay closed. Sometimes the sky won't look quite right. But when it does, you'll know. And the moment you do, you'll unfold quietly, naturally, beautifully into the version of yourself the world has been waiting for. Just like the garden, humming with quiet certainty as each bloom opens in turn. You are part of something larger than you can see, and in that rhythm, you belong. Ooh. It begins with a question that sounds almost like a poem. Do plants have feelings? It's been asked for centuries by philosophers, mystics, schoolchildren, and more recently, scientists. At first, the answer seemed obvious. No. No nerves, no brain, no thoughts. How could a plant feel anything? But then came the oddities. In the 1960s, a lie detector expert named Cleve Baxter connected a polygraph machine, a device meant to detect changes in stress, moisture, and electric resistance, to a houseplant. He wasn't expecting anything dramatic, but when he imagined setting one of its leaves on fire, the polygraph needle jumped. Now, the experiment wasn't rigorous. It didn't meet scientific standards. But it started something, a quiet curiosity that has never fully faded. Because the more we study plants, the harder it becomes to say what they don't do. We now know plants produce electrical impulses. They release stress hormones. They shift their internal chemistry when touched, wounded, or even when nearby plants are harmed. They recognize kin. They remember droughts. They warn each other of herbivores. All of these terms are wrapped in quotes because we're borrowing language from human experience, trying to describe something we don't fully understand with words we already know. But does that mean plants are feeling? Probably not in the way we are. They don't get nervous before public speaking. They don't feel awkward at reunions. They don't cry during movies. But they do react to the world around them. And their reactions are complex, adaptive, and often anticipatory. There's even research suggesting that plants can distinguish between different kinds of human touch, that they respond more positively to gentle handling than to mechanical or rough contact. Some plants wilt under stress, not just environmental stress, but social stress. When isolated, when handled aggressively, when deprived of vibration, light, or sound. Others thrive in community, in the presence of other plants. When spoken to softly, even if the content means nothing. It's not consciousness, but it might be something adjacent, something we haven't named yet. After all, we used to think emotions were only for creatures with large brains. Then we saw them in dogs, then octopuses, then birds, fish, maybe even insects. So where's the line? Maybe it isn't about feeling as we define it, but responding with care, adjusting to protect, changing to thrive, remembering pain and avoiding it next time. Isn't that the root of emotion, to learn from hurt? To move toward what nourishes, and maybe, in that sense, the trembling of a leaf when touched isn't fear, but caution. The extra sweetness in a fruit isn't joy, but generosity. The protective curl of a vine isn't love, but care. We can't be sure. But we also can't look away. Because once you see a sunflower, follow the sun. A tree send sugars to its sick neighbor. A root tip veer away from danger. You realize they are not objects. They are beings. Not human. Not animal. But alive in a way we still don't fully understand. And maybe that's enough. Maybe you don't need your fern to love you back. Maybe the act of caring for it, watering it, touching its leaves, giving it a name you never tell anyone else, is more than enough feeling for both of you. Because care doesn't need reciprocity to be real. It can just be, like the orchid that blooms once a year. Like the moss that grows slowly, gently, across a rock. Like you, lying here now, not doing much but healing anyway. Not everything has to feel in order to matter. Not everything has to speak in order to be heard. Some things, like plants, like rest, like softness, are here to remind us. There are other ways to exist, other ways to connect, other ways to be whole, even in stillness, even in silence, even without words. In a forest older than memory, something strange is happening. Not above the ground, where birds call and branches stretch, but beneath your feet in the soil, in the roots, in the mycelial silence. One tree leans, a neighboring tree senses it. They shift together, ever so slightly. Another tree, ill from drought, begins to shed leaves earlier than usual. The surrounding trees change too. Water use slows. Leaf chemistry adjusts. Signals unseen, unvoiced ripple through the forest. It's not random. It's not luck. It's something more like coordination. Because what looks like a cluster of individuals may, in truth, be a collective mind. The forest, it turns out, thinks together, not through neurons, not through brainwaves, but through networks, root systems, chemical signals, fungal bridges, electrical impulses. Each tree is its own self, but also part of something larger. Scientists have mapped the way nutrients are passed through root networks. How warning signals from one tree travel to others. How elder trees, the so-called mother trees, redistribute carbon to younger ones. And it turns out forests plan. They balance. They grieve. When a mother tree dies, its connected saplings sometimes falter. Growth slows. Direction changes, as if they feel the absence, or at least respond to it. What's remarkable isn't just that this happens, it's that it happens slowly. A kind of wisdom not built for speed, but for endurance. Forests can take decades to make a decision, which species to favor, which saplings to let through the canopy, when to bloom, when to shed, when to wait. And in that patience is strength. You might walk through a forest and see trees spaced out for light, but underground. Their roots are often intertwined, even grafted. Trees of different species share minerals, compete. Yes, but also cooperate. And the more we study this, the more it feels like a kind of intelligence. Distributed, decentralized, deep. The forest doesn't think like us, but it remembers, it learns, it adapts as one. And perhaps that's a better kind of thinking, not the kind that rushes toward conclusions, but the kind that listens, pauses, considers every leaf, every root, every voice. You've felt that kind of intelligence too, haven't you? Not the flash of sudden insight, but the slow knowing that comes from stillness. The way you understand something more deeply after sleeping on it. Or how your body seems to know what you need: water, quiet, light long before your mind does. That's forest thinking. Not urgent, but real. And maybe it's a kind of model for us, a way of living that honors connection over competition, that values community over speed, that doesn't separate, but blends. Because if trees, standing apart in space, can still act together in time, then maybe we can too. Maybe your thoughts aren't just your own. Maybe your well-being ripples into others quietly, invisibly, but undeniably, just as a pine's resilience is shared with its birch neighbor. just as a single tree's suffering reshapes the chemistry of the forest. You don't need to carry everything alone. That's not how ecosystems work. There's a network under you, around you, within you. So rest now. Let yourself be part of something larger, not with effort, but with trust. The forest doesn't hurry, it doesn't panic, and it doesn't think with a voice. It thinks with roots, with rhythm, with time, and so can you, under a pale night sky, somewhere quiet perhaps in a forest, or a windowsill garden, or even just your memory of a single leaf rests. It is still attached, still living, still part of something greater. But at this hour, it is not working, not photosynthesizing, not busy. It is calm. And if you could shrink yourself down, smaller than an ant, small enough to stand upon that leaf's waxy surface, you might notice something unexpected. Tiny pores closed tightly, cells moving more slowly, no rush, no tension. Inside, the leaf is not asleep, not the way you are when you dream of falling or flying or calling out without sound, but it is in a different state, a night mode, a quieter version of itself. It breathes less. It feels less light. It does not reach. It simply is, a kind of vegetal stillness. We rarely stop to notice it, this particular kind of presence, because it's not flashy, it's not noisy, it doesn't demand attention, but there's a richness in it. In that silent pause between growth spurts, in the hours when the world turns dark and the plant doesn't resist, the leaf, in a way, has found what many of us search for, a rhythm that makes no apologies, a trust in the cycle that asks for nothing. It doesn't fight the dark. It simply accepts it and prepares, gently, for light's return. Maybe that's why we feel something when we stare at leaves in the morning sun, or touch the edge of a potted plant at night before bed. There's no interaction, no exchange of words, but there is a recognition, a sense that this quiet thing has mastered a lesson we keep forgetting, that growth doesn't always look like striving, that rest is not weakness, that doing nothing is sometimes the bravest, most intelligent response of all. Some scientists believe that even at night, the plant is listening not with ears, but with biochemistry. Listening to soil moisture, to wind pressure, to subtle shifts in the angle of starlight, not reacting, just sensing, staying informed, staying aware, without needing to act. The human brain struggles with this. We crave answers, motion, resolution. But the leaf doesn't crave. It simply participates. It joins the world, every second, in whatever shape the moment allows. That's its wisdom. And maybe, if you let your thoughts soften just a little more, you'll feel it too. That you are not behind, not broken, not failing. You are in a cycle, one of many. And tonight, your role in that cycle is not to solve, or to grow, or to shine. It is only to be still, to rest, to fold gently into the dark, to trust in the invisible turning of things. The leaf doesn't know the sunrise is coming. It doesn't need to. It only needs to wait. And so, perhaps, do you?